Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We got a little 8-game slate here on Wednesday night for you guys. In this one, we're taking a look at the awful New York Knicks taking on the maybe best offensive team ever in 3 games, the Philadelphia 76ers, with their new look. James Harden and Embiid are gelling very well together. Take a look at some of the best bets in this one. Nate does have his great article up on playpicks.com as well with some best bets and player props in there for you. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. We've got a couple other videos up for you today, including that player props video that we are continuing to look to stay hot with, get back on track this week anyway and stay well above 500. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's jump into it.
Yeah, the Sixers are minus 10.5 right now. It hasn't really moved in terms of the spread. The total's seen a lot of movement. I saw it open at 223, go down to 221. Now it's at 224 or 5, depending where you get it. I thought it would be really obvious to bet this over, but we're seeing some fluctuation still. So get it, get the over while you can early. That's obviously going to be our angle when we talk about this game. But looking at the other 7 games on this slate, we got Hornets plus 3.5 at Cavs. That total is being bet up to 219. I mentioned in the article, like the over on that one too. Pacers are minus 1 with the Magic, immediate rematch there. The Jazz minus 14 in Houston as the Rockets play a back-to-back. Heat plus 4.5 at the Bucks, total of 227, and we will break that game down for you. Definitely an intriguing matchup. The Kings are plus 6 at the Pelicans with a 236 total in New Orleans. Thunder plus 15 at Denver, and then the Blazers plus 13 at Suns. So some huge spreads here for other games. Yeah. Huge spread on this one, too. I'm not messing with the spread, but I wouldn't blame anybody for betting the Sixers to win by 10 at home in Harden's home debut here. I mean, they've just been lights out on offense. The early returns are very, very good in 2 games with James Harden. They're scoring 129 points per game, shooting 50% from the floor, and getting 40 free throw attempts per game, which is exactly the type of monster we thought we might have with 2 of the best ever in terms of getting to the free throw line on the same team. The Knicks allowed 44 free throw attempts when they lost 125-109 at home on Sunday to these Sixers. So one of the 2 games in this very matchup. The pace has really ramped up, which is what I'm looking at first and foremost here. Even including their Milwaukee win right before the break with no James Harden, Sixers are now playing at a pace of 101.9, which is one of the fastest in the league over the entire season. Their offensive rating, 125 in that span. Not the greatest defensive rating either, 109, allowing opponents to shoot nearly 55% on twos. And that is where the Knicks are going to try to make their hay. Really going back their last 8 games, the Sixers have a 111 defensive rating, not great, 115 offensive rating. So they've gone over in 6 of their last 8. It's really just a simple bet for me here. I'm taking the Sixers to score a lot of points. I mean, sometimes we waffle on this, like, I don't know if the Knicks are going to come along. I don't know if the Sixers can clear their team total. I mean, yeah, absolutely. They're minus 120 to score 118. They probably will score much more than that. I think you can get better value, though. And certainly if you have a FanDuel account, betting on some individual performance doubles. I mean, Harden has a triple-double, I think, in both games now. He's averaging a triple-double in his last 2 against the Knicks. And that's plus 380, I think, at FanDuel for him to get a triple-double again in a win. But I would rather go with Tyrese Maxey because he's getting a little undervalued here. 15 points in a win, even money. Or 2 threes in a win, slightly better than even money, as he's done a really good job playing more off the ball since Harden's come along. I mean, there's just so many weapons for the Sixers team. There's no way anyone's going to stop them consistently, especially not a Knicks team that's just been quite terrible over their last 15 games or so.
Quite terrible. Yeah, this is it's blow it up time for the Knicks. I mean, that's not how things work, as we know. When Tibbs is the coach, there's really no blowing it up. Even if you are going to win 30 games, they could lose 50 games this season, and they were 21-22 about whatever 8-10 games ago. So yeah, it's all bad now for them. Everything that they wanted to do is down the drain. If you're not going to be a good defensive team, which we've noted they are not, with that number 25 defensive rating over their last 13, in their last 5 alone, they've given up 118 points a game. And really for the total, it's exactly what you said. Can they come along for the ride? And to be honest, I don't think they have to come too far along to do this. I think it's easy. It's not necessarily easy money for the Philly to score 120, but they're going to get damn close. And if they get 118 and the Knicks need to score 107, that seems right around where this total should end. I mean, obviously Vegas doing their job here. I'm putting things out right around that 224.5, 225 mark. And as you said, it's sort of fluctuating a bit. I wouldn't really bet this over too high. Once you start getting to 228 to 230, I get a little bit scared. I don't think it's going to get bet up that high. I think people still assume the Knicks can't score, which they can't. But I mean, at the very least, at least in those last 13, that offensive rating is still about 109 per 100 possessions. That pace is obviously super slow. But in this game with Harden and Embiid, you've got they're being called something pretty funny, the bonus brothers, right? Like, or just whatever it indicates that they're getting to the line 40 times a game. You're going to get your points that way. There's obviously nobody to stop Joel Embiid right now. You add the injuries to the front court for the Knicks. I believe Taj Gibson's still out. You've got Nerlens Noel still missing for this team as well. So there's plenty of holes right now in the exact spaces that you're going to see guys like Joel sort of just taking up and dominating. You got Alec Burks starting and playing point guard at this point for them with an individual defensive rating about 112, not the worst, but he's not anything that you need to really stop all the firepower that you're about to get from the Pacers from the Sixers. And what's interesting is you talk about Tyrese Maxey, 15 points in a win at -108. Really like that. I think anything with the win you feel good about with the Sixers here. And with Tyrese, it's really awesome to see how he's fitting in alongside James Harden and alongside Joel Embiid. It's interesting when he's not the main focal point, right? The guard with the ball in his hands the most and trying to run the offense, they're actually a lot better as his numbers were really good. When he had guys like Seth Curry and Joel Embiid on the court, not as good, prior to that. So all that stuff goes up. I think, lastly for the Knicks, I do think that they can score some points. I mean, in their last 8 on the road, we mentioned 115 points a game that they're allowing, scoring about 109 in those as well. I mean, that gets you really close, right, to that total that you need. And you look at the teams that they're scoring their points against, or at least that the total is going over, which, as we mentioned, has been a ton in their last 13, 10 of those last 13 going over. The only time we're not going over, we're talking about playing at home as well against the Thunder, on the road against the Blazers, who actually stepped up their defense for that roughly 10-game stretch where they were 7th in defensive rating or so. And then, the other under in there is the Jazz in a game where they were up. They had about 85 points going, with about 5 minutes left in the third quarter. And I think they ended with 101. Right. So you can always count on them in the fourth quarter. They've been so bad lately. And I think we can count on, no matter what's happening going into the fourth quarter, you might just consider smacking an under at that point in time live, because the Knicks have been essentially the worst fourth quarter team in the league over their last 10 games or so.
Yeah, we'll see if they're even competitive at that point, because the building will be rocking. Expectations are very high for the Sixers now, as they should be. They look great through 2 games after this trade. But it's really about the free throws, as you mentioned, when you talk about an over. And the Knicks are hacking lately. Really on the season on the road, they have the 3rd highest foul rate per possession. The highest happens to be Minnesota, which gave up 133 to this juggernaut recently. In their last 3 games, they're allowing the 2nd highest percentage points off free throws. That includes giving up 31% of their points to the Sixers when they trotted to the line 44 times. So also allowing a very high percentage inside the arc. The Knicks tend to go over when underdogs, 17-11 in that spot, and 8-4 in these division games. I mean, you're not even getting great odds. I mean, we're predicting such a good model here in terms of Sixers are gonna win pretty handily, and they're going to be responsible for getting us over the total. But when you bet Sixers to cover 10.5 and the over, you're only getting about plus 250, which I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that again, but I would like to get better odds, certainly with two things occurring there, but the money line and the over at plus 116, maybe you sprinkle some on both and see what plays out. Maybe both obviously could hit because, the Knicks giving up 115 in general have not necessarily faced the greatest offenses on the road. And now they face a Philly team that can just light it up with these guys out there. I think you're getting some value because Philly all season has been, going under, scoring less, playing slower at home, but it's a different look now. Obviously, a different team. Harden looks spry as ever, doing his classic, getting healed miraculously thanks to being traded, and looks like an MVP again. And there's just not going to be any way they stop him, and he certainly will want to put on a show here in his home debut.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, last thing I would say about Harden too is, you mentioned sort of the pattern that we see with him, right? At this point, he tanks on his team, did it with the Rockets, did it with the Nets, and then in both instances comes out in his first bunch of games with those teams. I mean, his first 15 or 16 games last season with the Nets were insane, and it's similar numbers to what he's actually just put up in his two games for the Sixers. As we said, 28 points, 14 assists, and 9 boards. 11 and a half assists for him tonight is plus 105, I believe. 105 on FanDuel there for him to get those 11 and a half assists. So, I think he's going to get over those. I mean, we're at the point where it's a double-double and a win for this team, a double-double for Harden or Embiid, and you're talking minus 150 with the win as well on those player performance doubles. I still think it's worth it for all those. I think anything you want to hit with a player performance bonus on a win, I don't see a world in which anybody on the Knicks comes out and just starts firing on the road and pulling this one out, even if they are hanging close in the third quarter, as I said earlier. So, I would like those assists plenty for him as well. And then, you mentioned even if you did want to just sprinkle a bunch of those double and a wins and rack up a bit of money, even though you're only getting, a bad return on your money there, you're still getting a pretty much guaranteed bet, in my opinion. So a bunch of those. And I know we like Maxey as well, which I know we'll talk about in our player props video as well. And that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure you're liked and subscribe to that page and check out those other couple videos we have for you today. And until we see you next, happy betting.